Hey everybody, Robert here from blackbeltgaming, continuing my read-through of Adventures Dark and Deep, which is first edition AD&D Expanded. Today, we're covering one of the older classes, the more classic classes, just like we've done Fighter already and Magic User. And we're getting into the Thief today. Let's take a look. So the Thief, it requires a dexterity of 9. Any race can be a thief, so this is just wide open. Anybody wants to be a thief, you can. Hit dice 6. You can be of any alignment except lawful good. Weapons, I think this is a bit of an improvement from the standard player's handbook for AD&D. Remember, I believe thieves could not use bows, and that may have been changed with Unearthed Arcana, but here short bow is fine, along with other typically one-handed lighter weapons: hand crossbows, daggers, darts, knives, broadsword, longsword, and short sword, different things, sling. Now, is this a typo? It could be. But if it is, I'm actually thinking of letting it stand. Armor is any. That's just interesting to me. So I'm going to come back and talk to that later. It's very likely that that's a typo. But let's sort of read the Thief with the idea that armor is any for the Thief, and let's see what we come up with. So thieves, sometimes known as expert treasure finders, are adept at a number of skills involving careful observation, stealth, hand-eye coordination. They're not necessarily robbers and burglars, although they certainly can be. Thieves advance on the following table. We see that typically they're going to level up faster than most other classes. Definitely faster than the barbarian, right? So, got a good picture of a thief kind of looking back over his shoulder as he has a lantern on the floor and attempting to pick a lock on a big treasure chest. It's like a double-decker treasure chest there. Thieves' starting abilities. We are all pretty familiar, if you're D&D players, with the old backstab. So when you are hitting an opponent from behind, it's a melee attack. So it doesn't seem to be listed as a ranged attack. It needs to be a melee attack in the back, stabbing the opponent. And the enemy does not know that you're there. When you're stabbing, you get a +4 bonus to hit. And the damage will be multiplied depending upon your level. So levels 1 to 4, it's double damage. And going up, at the higher, or some of the highest levels, 7 to 12 or so, it's going to be times 6. So it can really vary. They can backstab with any weapon that they're otherwise able to use. Evidently even something like a club. But creatures, note that only creatures with an identifiable back and which don't have 360-degree senses can be backstabbed. Question: What about undead? I feel like there was a big discussion about this maybe around the time of 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe you couldn't backstab an undead, and then there came certain expansion books, and if you had this magical item, you could backstab undead. Or, no, it wasn't called backstab. What was that? Sneak attack. I think it was called sneak attack. So, what do you think? Do undead creatures, they're going to have a back, right? Like a skeleton. But are they considered to have 360-degree senses? Or do they actually have what you would consider to be normal line of sight vision? I don't know. Just what's your opinion on that? How would you rule that? If I needed to do it on the spot, I probably might let the backstab occur against, say, a skeleton. And I probably might have the skeleton have his normal line of sight. And it's definitely got a back. So unless we come across something where it says backstabbing against undead is not possible, we'll deal with it. But I might allow it at this point. Climb walls. In those cases where some sort of toe and finger holds are present, thieves are able to climb straight vertical walls with ease. So there needs to be toe and finger holds. So the rate at which they're climbing is listed here, and it's kind of based, and this is interesting, it's not based on the thief level necessarily, it's more about the kind of surface they're climbing. So if it's a very smooth surface, much more difficult to climb, they're only going to go about 6 feet. It looks like 6 feet in a minute, so very slow going. And if there are lots of projections and stuff sticking out, they can kind of scale up pretty quickly at about 24 feet per minute. So there's some other options like cracked and rough surfaces. The chance that the thief may fall needs to be checked each round of climbing, and a single failure will indicate a fall to the ground. So let me know, have you ever played a thief or been DMing a game and a thief failed a climb check and they were maybe halfway up or more? Did you give them sort of any chance to make any other additional check to stop themselves on the way down, or was that it? They just fell and splat all the way down to the bottom. Probably old school DMs typically would have you follow the text here and you're going all the way to the ground. Old D&D was a rough game. So if the surface is slightly slippery, then the movement rate that we talked about already is cut in half. And the chance of success is cut in half as well. So it's actually impossible to climb on I guess you would say a slippery, wet, smooth surface. So if the surface being climbed is slippery, the movement rate is only 1/4 normal. And the chance is only 1 in 10. So maybe I jumped ahead. Let me read that again. Slightly slippery, movement rate is cut in half. Okay. If the surface being climbed is slippery, so I guess we're not saying slightly slippery, we're saying like full slippery, then I guess you go down to 1/4 the speed. Most dungeon walls will be rough, but slightly slippery due to slime and moisture and other things. Okay. Find and remove traps. Finding and remove traps, as the name implies, a two-step process. First, there is the presence of such a trap, be it a poison needle, a lock, a tripwire, a pressure plate. This has to be confirmed, and this is done by announcing that your character is looking for traps in this place. If your roll is successful, and the game master is going to roll, so you don't actually see the result, you're trying to detect the trap. And then you have to roll a second time to disarm the trap. So I think most often here we're talking about a roll checking for traps in a certain area, and if the DM or the game master makes the roll behind the screen and the player fails, and there is a trap there, most likely, I would say the game master would tell the player that there's no obvious trap. There doesn't seem to be any traps here. And then, there actually is. Because I think the other way is weird. If you actually told him that there was a trap when there wasn't, and then you get into making the second roll, it gets strange because there's really nothing for them to disarm, and then they're going to discover. It's kind of a waste of time, I think. So, if you're attempting to locate the trap and you do, and then you attempt to disarm the trap, and you have to try to block the needle or jam the pressure plate or do something there. And most traps will take 1 to 10 rounds to detect and another 1 to 4 rounds to disarm. I know some old school DMs, taking some of the ideas from, let's say, Dragon Slayer, which I was reading before this book. Players that play that way tend to like to go more with descriptions. So if you are looking and feeling around in the correct places and doing it the right way, you will discover the trap, or you will find the trap, but then you have to explain how you're going to disarm the trap. So it can actually be role played out. And when you need to make a roll, then you make a roll. And so if I were thinking about how to do it that way, having a player play a character that is a thief, the player is going to need to be good at asking questions to the game master and be very specific about what you're touching and how you're checking things out. And I think that can be very fun, not in a solo game, but when you're playing with a group, that sort of interaction back and forth can be a bit time consuming, but it can also be interesting. And maybe if you are pressed for time and asking all these questions and stuff might risk wandering monsters, if you're pressed for time and you want to jump to a roll, then you can do a roll when you're trying to do things faster. And, maybe failing the roll indicates that, not only did you fail to disarm the trap, you might end up setting it off, or maybe you're taking too long and a wandering monster appears. It can be all kinds of things. So back in the early days, gosh, it may have been the first game I ever played in, had a thief attempting to pick a lock, and it had a poison needle. And he failed to disarm it and got stuck. Or did he even know it was there? Maybe he was just attempting to pick the lock and the trap went off. Anyway, he got stuck. He didn't die, but he was greatly weakened by the poison. So let's look here. This ability to find and remove traps can also be used to set traps to catch others. Deadfalls, pits, snares, etc. Hide in shadows. Thieves are able to make themselves practically disappear under the proper circumstances. So if you're in the middle of a courtyard in the glaring sunlight, it's probably not going to happen. But in the twisting streets, a town lit by torchlight, or deep passageways in a dungeon, the thief might be able to render himself motionless while blending into the shadows. How would that be mixed up with something like some of the visions that the monsters have, maybe infravision, dark vision, that kind of thing? I might want to look into that. It's been some years since I've looked into that, something so strictly. And would you let a thief hide, or would they automatically to be discovered, maybe radiating some sort of heat source? Or are they able to kind of cover themselves with their cloak and their gloves and everything and sort of mask their presence? Let me know what you think about that. How well can a thief hide against monsters? Listen at doors. Thieves are able to, through careful practice, discern voices and sounds by listening at doors, windows, and similar portals. This can be useful when casing a room for a burglary, and it requires the ear to be pressed against the door. If you know, you know. All right. Move silently. Thieves are often able to cross even normally noisy surfaces, such as squeaky floors, gravel, etc., with barely a whisper. The thief cannot obviously run while moving silently, but they can move at a normal rate for walking down a dungeon corridor, which is about 120 feet per round for an unencumbered human, adjusted as appropriate. So the game master should roll for success in secret, because the thief is not going to know if they were truly silent or not. Well, here we are to open locks. By means of cleverness, nimble fingers, and training, thieves are able to pick locks, open combination locks, and solve complex puzzle locks. This doesn't apply to logic puzzles. Now, we see here the breakdown of the percentages per level. Let's just take a look at the level 1 thief. Pickpockets is 30%, open locks 25. Find and remove traps 20, move silently is only 15. Hide in shadows is 10. Listen at doors is 10, and climb walls is 85. And later on, we're going to read about an ability to read languages, and that doesn't start until level 4. So continuing with the lockpicking, the thief may or may not require special lockpicking tools to pick a lock. Your game master will make that decision. Essentially, any lock that normally requires a key will need to be picked using locks. Most locks will take 1 to 4 rounds to pick, and some that are very complex may take between 1 and 10 rounds. I don't see it here, and I wonder if I may have read it somewhere else. But I know in some versions of AD&D, if you fail a check to pick a lock or open a lock, you can't try again until you level up. When I was a dungeon master, I didn't do it that way. I thought that was a bit overly difficult. What I did was I had it either end up making a lot of scraping noises or grunts and frustrations or dropping their tools, something that can attract wandering monsters. So it basically, when they were failing to pick the lock, I don't think I gave them unlimited tries, but I think I let them attempt it at least 2 or possibly 3 tries. But they're burning up time and wasting having an encounter. So I think after, was it maybe the 3rd try? It's been years since I was an active DM in AD&D. I think I simply said this lock appears to be beyond your ability. And so I think by the book and some forms of this game, just one single attempt with a failure, and you've got to all the way, you've got to leave and level up somewhere, and then you can come back and try to pick it. And I always thought that was pretty rough. Pickpockets. Thieves can pick pockets, cut purses, remove small items from belt pouches, palm trinkets, and pilfer small items from market stalls. Already making me think of Skyrim here. Victims subtract 5% per experience level from the thief's chance of success. So a higher level victim is going to be harder to trick. If the thief fails, they may try again, but if he fails by 21% or greater, they will have been noticed. And that kind of makes me interested of maybe applying something like that to the open locks. You can try again, but if it's a big failure, maybe you were noticed by a wandering creature. Could even be a guard. It depends on where you are. Anyway, I think that's kind of a cool idea. So we have the thieves it looks like thieves can't. It's like a secret language of the thieves, communication between one thief to another, and stretches beyond cultural and other linguistic lines. So it does not count against the maximum number of languages that you can know, but I thought I remembered that it was full of gestures and tones and different things. But here's one of the advanced abilities. Beginning at level 4, thieves are able to make out many written languages. This ability is picked up in the study of treasure maps, diagrams, and similar items. So we have the Dexterity score and its effect on your chances of success. So really we're looking at ability scores of 16, 17, and 18 or above really making a difference. Anything that's going to be at 15 or less is either no effect or you start getting a slight penalty on different areas. So if you do reach the minimum dexterity score when you're creating your character and your thief has a dexterity of 9, you can be a thief, but you're going to get some pretty strong penalties. It's going to be very hard for you as a first level thief. Minus 15% to picking pockets. Open locks is like minus 10%. And what did we say? You had like a 25% chance at first level. So it's going to be down to like 15% chance. Move silently at minus 20. Wasn't it already at like just something like 10% or so? Anyway, it's pretty rough. You want a good dexterity if you can have it. So the race that you are, by the way, let's look at this note. Note that dexterity bonuses do not apply to thief abilities if any sort of armor other than leather or none is worn. So again, this is kind of opening it up that if you wear another kind of armor other than leather, even if you have the dexterity bonus, it doesn't apply. Your armor is too cumbersome. So it's just more incentive for the thief to be lightly armored. Thief abilities based on race. So centaur, dwarf, elf. Remember, all the races can be a thief. And yeah, the centaur is going to have a minus 15% chance to hide in shadows and a minus 10% chance to move silently as they're clip-clopping along and attempting to hide their massive form in a dark corner. I'm sure that's not easy to do. So it might be a bit difficult for that centaur to hide in the shadows and sneak up behind the enemy for that backstab. It's a funny image. Anyway, moving along, different races are just going to have a different knack for different things. So halflings, they're going to be pretty good at hiding in the shadows, plus 15%. But say the elf is not bad at hiding in shadows either, but elves don't seem to be so good at opening locks. They get a minus 5% chance. Let me take a look here and scan for the biggest penalty. Gnomes have a minus 15% chance on climbing, but so do halflings, just due to them being short. And centaurs, they can't climb at all. So you're having it a bit rough as a centaur thief, I believe. You can do it, but a bit of a challenge. Biggest bonus, what do we see? Maybe 15% might be the biggest I see here. We already talked about the halfling hiding. Anything else? Dwarves. Yeah, dwarves get a plus 15% chance to find and remove traps. So here we go. Thief abilities and armor modifiers. This just makes me think maybe that wasn't a typo after all. it's just kind of a cool thought to think that thieves can wear any type of armor that they want to. Makes me think back to the old Subutai in Conan the Barbarian, who we saw him scaling the side of the tower and using his bow and sneaking around. But in the final battle, he put on some armor, at least chainmail, and had his helmet, and he wasn't running around in light leather armor or no armor. So maybe you can, if you want to be a thief in plate mail, you can do it, I guess. You're just going to have a minus 75% chance to pick pockets and a minus 80% chance to move silently. So anyway, there's just a neat little chart here that, depending upon what kind of armor you have on, you might most likely face a penalty here. And looking down, there is a note, and it says, normally thieves are not allowed to wear most types of heavier armor. So that says normally. I think maybe what we've got here is that you can be a thief and you can do thief things. Even if you're multi-classed. So we're going to be looking at multi-class characters after I kind of run through the rest of the classes. But maybe this is another reason why this is listed here. So when you're mixing fighter and thief, and you do like to wear the heavier armors, you're just going to be at a disadvantage using your thief abilities. They're not completely negated. So the above table is included to account for multi-class characters who are entitled to wear such armor and who might want to employ their thief abilities. Yeah, I think that's good. But I still kind of like the idea that I just think it's cool that thieves can wear any armor that they want to. I know it really runs against what I know AD&D and D&D to do for thieves, so that really makes me think it is a typo. But it's still kind of cool to think about that as a expanded AD&D option. So we're about coming to the end of the thief here, and we have something about using magic scrolls. And this comes much later. Beginning at level 10, the thief's proficiency at reading ordinary languages can be applied to magic scrolls as well. This does not apply to scrolls for clerics, druids, or mystics, but it does include scrolls of protection and those that pertain to magic users, illusionists, and savants. Due to the difficult nature, there's just a flat 25% chance that the scroll will be incomprehensible to the thief and just can't be used. If that happens, there's also a 10% chance per level of the spell that the thief will inadvertently mispronounce it, thus reversing its effect if it has a reversible effect. Otherwise, the scroll is simply incomprehensible to the thief, although it can still be read by the appropriate type of spellcaster. And that was something that was always cool that I think they took that out of later editions, didn't they? But kind of neat that a thief could eventually get high enough and skilled enough that they could possibly use magic scrolls. I don't remember if those penalties and such were so high. I thought it was really just your percentage chance to read it or not. But I would have to go back to the old first edition player's handbook and see if there was detailed information about it. Just a flat 25% can't do it, and then a 10% chance per level of the spell that it will backfire. If anybody watching knows that and knows the old AD&D better than I do, let me know. We just didn't get up to games where thieves got that high of a level. So I just very rarely played in higher level games of AD&D. But that's going to finish up the Thief. I had a fun time reading that one. And Like I said, I still think the armor thing is a misprint, but it's kind of a cool idea, actually. Let me know what you think about that, too. I'll catch you later, everybody.